Today I want to talk about how do you join two boards together. It's a common need in woodworking, and there's a variety of ways. But today I want to introduce to you a tool called a mortiser. And I want to use a mortiser as an example to bring home a rather simple but a very significant point. The need to work together to accomplish a common goal. So as I mentioned, the challenge in woodworking is how do you join two boards together? Depending on the project, it may be just a simple screwing it together with some screws and using a drill, and those two boards are together. But it may be that the project doesn't lend itself to that kind. You may need to put the boards like so, or like so, or like so. There's so many different things that you can do with two pieces of lumber, two boards. And if you're designing a table or a chair, then it matters how you put them together. Well, today I want to talk about what's called a mortise and a tenon. A mortise, if you wish, is a hole in the wood. And a tenon is that corresponding piece of the wood that fits into the hole. You can see on this woodworking bench that I built, there's a variety of steps that I use to join the boards together. Here on the top, there's 5 different boards, and 3 boards deep, 5 across, and those are all put together simply with wood glue. Here on the end is not the best example of a dovetail, but a rather large dovetail where it's put together not just with glue, but there's a mechanical joint that holds this. In fact, they've discovered dovetails in the Egyptian pyramids, so dovetails have been around for a very long time. And the reason being, eventually glue will give away. But if there's a mechanical joint, like a dovetail or a tenon, then you have the strength beyond the glue. You have this mechanical joint that keeps wood together with the twisting and the torquing of wood. What I did on the bench, though, is I used some pretty massive tenons and mortises. So in the picture that you'll see is 3 examples, 3 pictures of where I cut the hole in the tenon. The mortise and tenon provides strength and durability. As a mechanical connection, it doesn't rely only on the strength of glue. Mortise is a hole in the wood and is designed to receive the corresponding projection, or the tenon. Together, the tenon and the mortise join and lock the parts together. So the challenge is, how do you cut the mortise? How do you create this hole that then the corresponding tenon goes into? Well, there's a variety of ways. You can use a chisel and just simply chisel it out. It's a very acceptable way, but certainly it's tedious and slow. Another way is you could use a drill or a drill press and drill out the bulk of the hole, and then take a chisel and square it up. Another way is to use a router. This is called a plunge router. It's plunged because you have a bit, a router bit that looks something like this. You put the router bit into the wood, it spins fast, and you lower it in, and you can create a very clean, very crisp hole. And then all you have to do is square up the edges or round the edges on the tenon. So a plunge router is literally, as it says, it plunges into the wood. Well, there's a tool, as I mentioned, called a mortiser. This is a tabletop mortiser. It uses a bit. It was designed by Green & Green in the 1800s, and as you can see, there's 2 pieces of this bit. There's a regular drill auger bit. As you can see, it has a very sharp edge on it, and it is designed to cut the wood and to cause the chips to flow up. The other is a hollow point chisel, and much like this chisel, it's just squared off in 4 different ways, and then this auger works on the inside. So as it drills out the wood, then these 4 chisels then makes a square hole. This is a small tabletop mortiser, As you can see, there's, much like a drill press, there's just a chuck that chucks in the bit, and then there's another part of it that holds the chisel. As you have the wood braced in, and then as you come down, as you can see, it simply goes into the hole, and as it's turning, it brings that wood up, and you can simply move it. Very inexpensive tabletop, and certainly I've used it for several years before I finally upgraded to a larger model. Let me show you one in action. Same kind of thing. You have a chuck that the bit ties into, and then the chisel is caught and supported here. The thing I like about this one is it gives you the ability to clamp it down, to hold it down. And then with these, I can literally move it from side to side or front and back. So I'm going to use this, and I will drill out several holes, and you can see how it works. Kind of noisy. So that drill auger and that bit makes for a very nice square hole. So what's the purpose? It takes the auger and the chisel working together to accomplish the goal. And in this case, a mortiser cutting the mortise. So now the so what? What is the lesson of the mortiser? As you saw, it took two different items to bring together to be able to cut that square hole. And the lesson for me is the importance of working together as two individuals, whether in a church, a business, or even in a marriage, and working together in a way to accomplish a common goal. But let me suggest to you, in order to do that, there's about 6 things that I'd like to suggest for you the next time you're faced with a challenge or a problem. First is, before the problem ever is identified, come up with your common values, your common goals, your common purpose. Better to do this before the problem arises. What is most substantively important to you as a couple, as a church, as a business, as an organization? Is identifying the critical elements that you will adhere to. The second step is to identify what the problem is, the requirements or the challenge. It's thinking through the issue and not dealing with what I call the smoke, but really focusing on what's causing the smoke. It's boiling the problem down. It's analyzing the issue in a way that you can begin to see the different parts and how they come together to create the problem. In marriage, too often we get so caught up in the emotional side of it that we can't really back out of that and begin to focus on the problem. The third step is think about potential approaches with no judgment. It's coming up with ideas of how you might address that problem. It's coming up with possible solutions. It's having that free exchange of, in a discussion of, well, here would be one way, here's another way. Just as we talked about the different ways of joining a board, you can attack that particular problem in a variety of ways, and you're just coming up with different ideas. The next, or the fourth step, is to come up with pros and cons. It's thinking about, okay, if we were to approach it this way, then what are the strengths of that approach? What are the weaknesses of that approach? What might work given a certain set of circumstances? What's good about it? What's bad? Again, with no judgment. It's simply coming up with pros and cons. The next step is to pick one. It's to try it. Give a time, a duration. Hey, we decide we're going to take this approach and we're going to try it for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, whatever it is. And then after you pick that approach, you try it. And in good faith, you try that approach to see, does it in fact solve the problem? By working together out of a set of common goals, with a clearly identified problem, with brainstorming of potential approaches, listing pros and cons of all those different approaches, and then picking one and trying it, you'll find that in marriages, those insurmountable problems suddenly become very easy to overcome. And I find that's true in organizations. I find it's true in the shop when I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to connect a board, to overcome a potential problem of how do I work the mechanics of it to do what I want it to do. It's really the same issue. Thinking about it, I've got my goal, I think through different approaches, I try one, if it works, great. If not, then I go back through the process. So working together, I think you'll see that in the mortise chisel, it takes both the auger and the chisel working together to accomplish the goal. Thank you very much.